I'm Kara, Associate Artistic Director at Milwaukee Film, and I'm really excited to welcome all of you to our virtual Milwaukee Film Sofa Cinema screening room and chat room. I'm thrilled to welcome back to Milwaukee, albeit in a tiny box on a screen, the director of Driveways, Andrew Ahn. Andrew was here with us during the festival in 2019, and now his film is screening in Sofa Cinema. So hopefully you have all checked it out. And if you hadn't, we will try to avoid huge spoilers. And we'll recommend it very, very strongly. Hi, Andrew. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back in Milwaukee. Yeah, I had such a great time at the festival last year. Really loved the audiences. I'm very happy that Driveways could be part of the virtual screening series you have.
Yeah, when it became available, I was like, yes, please, let's show this because it is sort of the spirit of what we want to be giving people to their couches right now, right? The kinds of stories and moods that we want people to be able to access through cinema at sort of a tough time for a lot of people. Let's rewind though to the starting point. I know that you got kind of approached with Hannah and Paul's script. So can you talk a little bit about that initial response to the script, to the screenplay, to these characters, to the story, and what was exciting for you in taking it on?
Yeah. So one of our producers, Joe Piro, he had seen my first feature, Spa Night, and really responded to it. And he had been working with Hannah and Paul, developing the screenplay for Driveways, and he sent me their script, saying, "Hey, I think you might be into this." And I'd been looking for screenplays to direct, things that I hadn't written. I think after Spa Night, I wanted to try, directing something that I hadn't written myself. And it's really hard. There are not a lot of great scripts out there, and the ones that are good, they might not necessarily like speak to you, or that they might not be the right fit, even if it's great. And when I read Hannah and Paul's screenplay, I was just so kind of blown away by how human it felt. It was such a well observed film. It felt so kind of lived in and authentic, and it just had this real humanity to it, that I really try to articulate in my film work. And so I read it once in a coffee shop, and then was kind of surrounded by a whole bunch of other people, and then I said, oh, I think I need to read this by myself. And I read alone, and with a cup of tea, and I just like wept because it was so beautiful. Something that I love about this story is that the drama doesn't stem from hate, or like a villain. That the drama actually comes from this fact that people love each other too much, and that to me is um like, so in some ways it's like it feels more tragic.
Hmm.
And so I really wanted to take it on, and um I met with Joe and with one of our other producers, James Seamus, and told them why I felt like I was the right person to make this. And I had pitched the idea that Kathy and Cody, played by Hong Chow and Lucas J, would be Asian American characters, and they were really excited about that. And the rest is history. It really felt like a coming together of just really like passionate individuals who had like a very specific vision to create a film like Driveways, which isn't necessarily something that a lot of people are making right now.
Yeah. you segued really beautifully by revealing that the script kind of initially hadn't sort of created the kind of like sort of racial dynamic, even though it isn't a super like strong dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about why that was a choice that you wanted to sort of make, and what and how that maybe changed the film or the story, and Hannah and Paul's response to that, taking that kind of direction?
Yeah, sure. The script wasn't written, specifically for Asian Americans. It was kind of a, open ethnicity, like, casting opportunity. Um, but I do think that a lot of other directors might have just kind of defaulted as like, oh, like it's, a white mother and son. But and it might sound kind of reductive of me to say, that because I'm Asian American, I wanted to cast Asian Americans, but it's kind of true. It kind of is as simple as that in some ways.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I think what I was responding to was the fact that Hannah and Paul had written Kathy and Cody as feeling like outsiders in this town, and and so in many ways, just kind of by casting Kathy and Cody, to be Asian American characters, I was just kind of externalizing that feeling of otherness that many people of color can feel in spaces that are primarily white, and so I felt like it just really like made a lot of sense, and there are kind of bits of dialogue that Hannah and Paul had already written that kind of just like worked, on another level, by having Kathy and Cody be Asian American. When Linda, the nosy neighbor, played by Christine Ebersol, comes and looks at Kathy and Cody and says like, "Oh, I assume you're related," like to the woman that used to live here.
Yeah.
It just means something a little different.
Yeah.
And even just that, like, where are you from? Like Michigan. It's like,
Yeah.
really,
Oh.
like, just like these little things that uh, were actually not changes to the script. Like they
Wow.
were already written there, and it just kind of like activated in a slightly different way because of the casting choice. Also very selfishly, like I wanted to work with Hong Chow. I had seen her in Treme, I had seen her in Downsizing, and she's so talented. And I feel like I just wanted to meet her. I didn't even actually think that she would say yes to making the film. But I think she responded to the script. She had seen Spa Night in the theaters, my first film. Like she knew who I was, which was just like super cool. And so the opportunity to work with Hong, and then the opportunity to cast Lucas in his first movie as Cody, like I think breaking new talent for
Yeah.
me, who that might not necessarily get this opportunity, like that's a real joy in my career, and something that I love doing as a director, to kind of discover talent for people to see and say, wow, like this person's amazing. And so I think that's another element to like why I wanted to make Kathy and Cody Asian American.
Yeah. And I mean, he is an incredible,
His first film.
discovery. Great, good discovery. Um, Folks out there on YouTube, feel free to put questions into the chat there. At whatever point they'll get to us, I can talk. We can talk all night, but and we will. But if you have questions that you want to fold in, please do send them our way. Let's talk a little bit more about casting. I'd love to hear how you discovered Lucas, but then it's probably almost time for our inevitable Brian Dennehy question. So maybe we can also talk about that.
Yeah. So, with Lucas, we worked with our casting director, who's the best in the business, Avi Kaufman. And, uh, you know, we were concerned, you know, like there's always a worry because it's a, you know, a child actor, you know, had to be Asian American, had to be a certain age, you know, had to really be able to, um, you know, carry a film, you know. Driveway is, you know, it's kind of Cody's point of view, and so, um, you know, I was nervous about it, but I felt like the talent existed, and we just had to like do the due diligence and you know, search. And AV had found Lucas. You know, he has a an agent that works a lot with, you know, child actors, and asked, you know, Lucas to submit a tape. He almost forgot to do it because his family, they had gone to Disneyland, and the tape was due, you know, that evening, and they like rushed home to finish it. But yeah, you know, what I thought was so great about Lucas was that you know, he has an old soul quality to him that, you know, in thinking about this relationship between Cody and Dell, this friendship, like, you know, that made so much sense for that character. And it's really hard to find, you know. I think there are child actors that feel kind of almost like too wise to the world, you know. And then you have child actors that feel too young.
Yeah.
You know, Lucas really like kind of hit that balance, and then also was just so focused. You know, he really stayed present in the scenes. You know, in the way that, you know, it's very hard for even adult actors to do. With Brian Dennehy, you know, like it was just, again, kind of a surprise. Like with Hong, like you know, we sent the script not thinking that she'd say yes, and kind of similar with Brian. I thought maybe he would be like, like, you know, thanks but no thanks. But
Hmm.
he really, you know, he loved the script, and he loved, you know, the direction that I wanted to you know, to take with the film. He really loved the character. He found a lot of kind of connection with Dell's character. Um, and so he said yes. And you know, we had you know, two conversations, but he was like super ready to go. And I think what was so amazing about Brian, you know, is that he could have just like phoned in this performance, and I would have been thankful. But he really tried. You know, he was working. He was working hard. You know, there's the scene in the film where Dell tells Cody, this is a bit of a spoiler. There's a scene where Dell tells Cody that he's moving to Seattle at the end of the summer. And we shot Brian's close-ups first, and then we shot Lucas's close-ups. And then we were done with the scene. And then Brian came up to me and said, hey, you know, like Lucas was so good. And he was trying so many different things. Like I'm really inspired. Like I have some ideas. Like, do you mind if we do a couple of extra takes for me?
Huh.
And what I thought was so cool is that he was so humble that like he, you know, like was admitting like, oh yeah, like my child co-star like is like inspiring me. And then also that he like would want to stay on set, you know, and not just like go back to, you know, crafty and eat snacks, or, you know, like chill out in an air conditioned room. Like he wanted to stay on set and keep working. And
Mm.
you know, I hope that when I'm that age that I'm still that motivated to do work, you know. um I think he did such beautiful work in this film, you know, just like some of the best in his career, and utilized like kind of years of experience, and you know, both, you know, acting and then also just being a human to bring this kind of like humanity to the role that the, you know, that the film really called for. You know, and I'm so glad that the film can serve as a tribute to him, and you know, his talents and abilities as an actor, and also his kindness and generosity as a man. You know, it's very bittersweet for me that the film is coming out, because so many people are saying such lovely things about his performance, and he's not around to hear it. But I am glad that people are getting a chance to say goodbye to him through the film.
Yeah. And I guess don't spoil it if this is not the case, but I am imagining that his and Lucas's like on set but not on camera like relationship, I am imagining was probably incredibly formative, probably for both of them. It sounds like from the description that you're giving in terms of creating a bond.
Yeah, they were super chummy. I remember they only had the opportunity to meet the day before filming, and so I was a little bit nervous, because what if they didn't like each other, But they actually got along like so well, so quickly. They talked about theater, because Lucas had done some stage work. Between takes, Brian would help Lucas with a British accent just for fun. They were I think they were really like just like so glad to be around each other and to
Mhm.
have this experience together. I think Brian really took Lucas under his wing. This was Lucas's first film.
Mhm.
Brian really wanted to make sure that Lucas had a great time. And they were so close, and Brian just loved spending time with Lucas so much that later in the shoot, when we had to film some of the scenes that are early in the film, when Del and Cody aren't friends, and Del is a little bit more skeptical of Cody. Brian was actually like way too nice, and I had to direct Brian to be a little bit more gruff with Cody, and Brian would say, like, why, like, the kid's so great, like, why would Del be um why would Del be mean to him? And so it was just like such a gift for the film that their friendship, that you see on screen, is authentic. That it was something that was a part of was a part of their chemistry.
Yeah. And inspiring that I guess that this friendship that we're seeing on screen that we're feeling kind of warmed by is one that is real or can be
Yeah.
real, could be real in our off-screen world. Um, there's sort of it's a comment from YouTube, but with a little bit of a question around sort of an expression. Ari Papermaster says, I love this film, especially the ending, admits to crying a little at the end, and just sort of wonders, about kind of that mood. Is that part of kind of the emotion that you were hoping to achieve? Did you succeed?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, I really wanted to wear my heart on my sleeve with this film. Uh, I think that there is um, often uh, uh, there's often a kind of distance that filmmakers might put, between themselves and the emotion of the film. They want to be kind of cool. I think there's a lot of kind of jaded filmmaking, and
Mhm.
for me, like, I didn't really want to be cool. I just wanted to tell a great story, and to let you like feel these characters and understand who they are and where they're coming from. And so I don't think I necessarily like wanted to like wring out tears from an audience, but I did want you to I did want audiences to feel the emotion of these characters. And so every choice that I made, in directing and working with my cinematographer and working with my production designer, my costume designer, my editor, my composer, all of these choices that I had to make as a director, I really thought about, like, okay, like, well, where is the emotion here,
Mhm.
how can we be closer to these characters? And so the fact that people do have an emotional response to the film is I'm really glad that people can open up to the film in that way, and that the film gave them the space to have kind of a cathartic release.
Yeah. You talked just a little bit there about sort of really these really really specific choices, and I revisited the film, and I'm going to have a question about revisiting it now momentarily, but I do want to talk about some of these details. I recently saw a really great tweet about flossing. There's this picking sticker moment. That cat shirt, like it's like costume, it's set design, it's sort of kind of throwaway kind of script moments. And then for eagle-eyed Wisconsin viewers, Rocky Rococo. Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
how those details came to be? Were those all you? Were those all in the script? Kind of what was that kind of collaborative process on set to get to those really thoughtful details?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, for somebody who decides to kind of stick through the kind of title, end credits at the end of the film when Cody plays with the neighborhood kids, that there's a little bit of flossing happening. The dance move, people don't know, and that wasn't something that I asked, the actor to do. The actor is Jeter Rivera, and he's great, and he, he just that's what he likes to do when he dances, and for me it was just like it was so, you know like it was just joyful, and I
Mhm.
think the other thing too for me is that the film, can kind of feel a little timeless, even though there's like an iPad and things like that, or a tablet, I should say. But like I love that it feels really current because of the flossing, that's like a little evidence. Um, the sticker moment that you mentioned, when Cody's at the hardware store, that was something scripted, and I think again kind of goes back to Hannah and Paul's script, and just how beautifully observed the script is, that they could find these like little moments that feel like they have emotional weight to them, uh, and they're not necessarily super obvious, but I hope kind of through the you know experience of watching 83 minutes of it, that you really get a sense of these characters and what these little moments mean to them. And then with Rocky Rococo's, that was so the pizza boy that comes and interrupts a conversation that Kathy and Cody are having like on the porch. um uh you know our first assistant director, Sienna Brown, her family, I believe, like founded Rocky Rococo's, and she said, "Hey, like, do you want me to just inquire with my folks and see if that they'll send a hat and a shirt and a pizza box?" And so that was just like a fun thing to put into the film. I really love kind of collaborating with my cast and crew, to find these little moments,
Yeah.
because I think they allow the film to feel more human. Like I think what I don't want to do as a director is like puppet the image, puppet the actors so that they do exactly what's in my mind, because that would be, for me as a filmmaker, like one, like very boring. Like I love being surprised on set. There's the scene where Cody has his birthday at the VFW. And I remember when the cake comes out and they sing happy birthday to Cody. There was a take, and it's the take that we used in the film, where Hong leaned over to Lucas and whispered to him, "Make a wish." And that wasn't something scripted. That wasn't something that I told her to do. And I saw it happen, and I just started bawling because I thought it was so beautiful, and so for me, it's like you have to give your cast and crew the space and the environment, and the freedom to explore and put in their own ideas. Some of them might not work, but some of them will, and they'll make the film so much better. And so that to me is kind of my philosophy as a director.
Yeah. I mean, it expands your creative capacity, because if you're the only one making creative choices, there's a limitation of what you can only bring your perspective. And I think that's
Exactly.
beautiful to hear that that's kind of a piece of your ethos. So the film premiered at Berlin in 2019, a really strong festival run, and that's because the film is incredible. Of course, we all know that. And now it's playing kind of on VOD and then this new virtual theatrical world that we have. Um, I'm interested in hearing about this response now, because in revisiting the film, it's a film in some ways about kind of isolation and loneliness and homes. A lot of face mask wearing, which I was just like, oh my goodness. And about like sort of the, sort of human connection being so essential, but also so kind of like challenging or tentative in so many ways. And so I'm interested in like how either audiences are responding differently, or how you're reflecting maybe differently on the story and its themes in our current moment.
Yeah, uh, I I obviously, like, I wish we weren't in this, pandemic health crisis, like, people, losing their lives, like loved ones, getting super sick, and it's a really tough moment for the world, and so I wish that this weren't the case. And so for me, like with Driveways, I hope that it offers um, some sort of comfort to people, and to serve as a reminder that that human connection is important, and that regardless of what separates us, whether it's race or age, a pandemic, the physical barrier of a driveway, that whatever separates us, that we'll find ways to connect and value each other. I think that that's such an important lesson that the film carries with it, for audiences. um it's been really wonderfully received. I've been so happy to hear from people who mention the film on Twitter, on Letterboxd. It's been really it's been really cool. And I think for a film like Driveways, which is a very intimate film, like it really matters that kind of like word of mouth, kind of um uh recommendations. I love that people are watching it with their families. um I think it's a great film for families to watch together, because of the kind of uh age range of the main characters. um there's kind of something in it for everyone. So yeah, I hope that more people get a chance to see it, that people recommend it to friends and family that they think might really like it. And that it gives you the opportunity to reflect on how we're living our lives, and that we should take advantage of the moment that we're living in to the best of our abilities.
And a driveway is probably a appropriate width for social distancing, even if you are making a connection across a driveway. Maybe just don't, crisscross it and things like that. But it's sort of
Exactly.
there's hope, there's promise, I think, in that idea. We have a question from our mutual friend, Jim Brunzell, who first gives you credit for a great film, particularly acknowledges Jerry Adler's role and as an underappreciated actor, but is asking about the biggest challenge for you kind of going from Spa Night to Driveways.
Yeah, I loved working with Jerry Adler too. He is like such a good human being. Every time he came on set, and chatted with another member of the cast and crew, they would immediately say like, "Oh, I want Jerry to be my grandfather." Like he's just like a super kind man, and just like such an amazing actor. He the poem that he reads in the film Thanatopsis, like, that's not an easy moment for an actor to recite a poem, and he just really he it was so good, just like so good, and I'm so glad that we got to work with him. The biggest challenge of kind of making Driveways, going from Spa Night, I think for me it was like directing something that I hadn't written. It's a different skill set in many ways, like trying to interpret text that you didn't write yourself. Like there's an added kind of level of investigation. But I'll say this, like as much as it was a challenge, it was also just like so liberating in some ways. When you're directing your own material, like sometimes you can get really precious about like the words on the page, and you lose a little bit of objectivity. But when you're directing something that you haven't written, there's this kind of uh, both kind of distance and then also just joy that you have. Like there's a distance from the material because you haven't written it, but then also a joy in kind of examining the work, analyzing the work, and you kind of the rush and the thrill of discovery, that you can discover something in the text. So yeah, I think it's something that I would love to do as I continue in my career. I don't think that I'll only be a writer director, and I think part of that is because there are things in Driveways that I never would have written, like that final monologue from Brian Dennehy. Like I never would have written that scene because I would have been too much of a wuss to write it. Like I would have been like, "Ooh, like this is a lot of talking. Like maybe they can just sit quietly on the porch," like but because Hannah and Paul wrote it and wrote it so beautifully, I had the honor of directing Brian Dennehy in a monologue for the ages. Like, come on, like that's gonna be a highlight in my career for sure. And so to get that opportunity because I am directing someone else's work, like I think that's that's something that I want to have in the future.
To be respectful of your time as well as our audiences, I have one final question, and it's kind of the normal final question, but I'm interested in hearing sort of like what's next, what are you working on now, but then specifically like how are you working now, and how are you, sort of working on something that is also okay, is what I want to say there.
I think right now I'm really just putting a lot of time and effort into getting Driveways out there for people to see. Supporting arts organizations like Milwaukee Film, local art house theaters.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah. I really want to make sure that you know people get the opportunity to watch the film and also support really great organizations. And so doing a lot of Q&As and talking about the movie. I am working on a couple of other things. I'm writing, trying to figure out my next feature, trying to work on an episodic project. um, all of my projects are connected to me in some way, whether it's being Asian American, being queer, being a Los Angeles story. I really like to kind of be personally inspired in some way. Um, and then how am I working?
Yeah.
It's been hard. It's difficult. I mentioned to you, Kara, before we started, the public recording of this Q&A, that I'm quarantining at my parents' place, and it's an odd thing. When my parents are here, it kind of feels like I'm like a high schooler again,
Mhm.
and I really love like being able to like work in coffee shops. That's kind of how I usually work. But now having to work at home, it's definitely an adjustment. But I've been so thankful for like a really wonderful group of family and friends that we can support each other, and keep each other company, if only through Zoom. I yeah, I'm just trying to stay like physically and emotionally healthy, so that I can support others when they might not be. Part of my process is knitting. I do a lot of knitting. And then I've also like really gotten into houseplants, which is
Yeah.
it's a fun thing. I think I'm trying to fill a void.
Probably.
um, but yeah,
But that's fine. It's a healthy way to fill that void. I'm
yeah.
playing Animal Crossing and I have this robotic crocodile whose name is Dell, who now I am always going to think
Oh,
is Brian Dennehy is as
I
Dell. And I've discovered a new love of him when I was thinking about this moment. I
I
wasn't
love
expecting
that.
to share that with all of you, but here it is.
I
Uh,
love that so much.
well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody watching on YouTube. Thank you for spending time with us. If you haven't watched Driveways yet, it's on Sofa Cinema through Milwaukee Film. And if you already have watched Driveways, we have plenty of other wonderful films there to give you similar feels, all the feels, different feels. Please keep checking it out and supporting independent film and independent art house type of cinemas. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.